Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley. And today we're going to be talking about embracing the villain within. And I've been playing with this word villain for a couple of weeks now. It has obviously such a huge emotional charge in our society because we've really been led and programmed to see the world through good and bad, through duality. And this is just, the level of consciousness that we're at. And obviously through this work and Rachel's teachings, we are elevating ourselves to oneness consciousness. And so what does that mean in terms of the villain? Well, when I was a kid and I used to watch movies, there was always a good guy and a bad guy. It was always, I want to be one of the good guys, and you don't want to be one of the bad guys. Growing up in the UK, there's a lot of war movies. It was Britain and the Allied forces and America versus the Germans watching the war, and there was always this enemy. And then watching James Bond, there was always the evil villain that's doing all this harm, and they're the one that we point all of the blame. And this is what this program has been kind of like leading me into, is seeing all of the blame and seeing how much I didn't want to be the villain. I just didn't want to be the bad guy. I didn't want to be anyone that people would look at in a negative light. And that led to a whole host of programs and ways that I would show up to try and avoid being seen as the villain in any capacity, because the truth, like deep inside of my heart, I don't want to cause harm. However, when we move through life and we accumulate wounds and we have trauma and we develop these programs and we have caused harm, when we don't embrace the fact that we are carrying energies that might do unloving things or might have done unloving things in the past, we are denying an aspect of ourselves that needs healing. And I've really been waking up to there is a villain inside of me, this part of me that I don't want to look at. And that doesn't mean that's the truth of me. But if I just look away, if I turn the other cheek, if I don't look at this aspect of my shadow, what I found actually is it created a massive amount of insecurity. Now, what I really wanted to be is I want to be this safe man. I want to be a safe, secure man. And what I've come to see is if I'm hiding an aspect of myself from myself and the rest of the world where I have caused harm, I'm hiding the part of me that could be seen as the villain. And the way to liberation from that, the way to true security and groundedness within myself, within my masculinity, who I am as a man, is by embracing the fact that I have caused harm. I have shown up as the villain. And I remember doing Rachel's Ways of Oneness course last year, and part of that was looking at all the ways that we do cause harm. And I look back now and I noticed how much I skipped over that section. There was a part of my shadow that didn't want to look at itself then, because I wasn't powerful enough. I wasn't loving enough. And that's not to shame or put myself down. At that time, I wasn't powerful enough to look at those parts of me without any judgment, without any shame or negativity. And I'm finally arriving at a place where I can do that from a very neutral place. And that is allowing me to elevate out of this idea that there is a villain, there is a good, and there is a bad, and getting more to a place of oneness and neutrality, which is where I want to live my life.
Beautifully said. I'd love if you could give an example of how what triggered you into an aspect that you were trying not to look at.
Yeah, this started a couple of weeks ago. there was a bunch of programming in terms of blame and victim that I've been working on for a long time that have been all woven into this. And it's all around, for the last year, I've been getting comfortable with allowing myself to feel anger. And the more that I allow that emotion, can seem a very powerful emotion to some, to come and be expressed, I was, at a deeper part of me, as I was worried I was going to cause harm. And eventually, it wasn't until I got some feedback from Rachel, and I could feel that when it came to sharing, I could feel this constriction in my throat. And it felt like I was just speaking from my throat chakra, and it wasn't connected or integrated with the rest of my energy centers. I could feel that it was just all coming out of like my throat, and it was like this forcing energy. And I'm doing some deeper work, and I am not at all at the bottom of this. So there's still work to be done and parts to be found here. But what I saw is that I was having to force from here because I was suppressing all of this energy because I was worried that I was going to cause harm. Now, what Rachel, in all of her amazing gifts, could see within me through a psychic reading that she did on me, was that in the past, I had shown up in unloving ways to a romantic partner. And when I was a late teen, I would get very drunk, and all of this anger would come out, and I would project it onto my partner. And if anyone is listening to this that was on the back end of that, I'm so sorry from the bottom of my heart. I never want that to happen. And that's why it would only come out when I was extremely intoxicated. Now, I do believe that this stems back from like a really young childhood wound, which I don't have a memory of yet because I'm still working on it. But what I do remember, and when she said that and started doing the reading, immediately what I felt was back to this like late teen, early 20s guy that would wake up the next day after drinking a fistful and knew that I did something wrong, but wasn't quite sure what it was. And all of this rage and anger used to just come out. And that actually caused, what Rachel guided me through, was a secondary wound that I was holding on to, a lot of shame for the harm that I've caused, divine shame, I would see it as, because it's letting me know that I've fallen from grace. And so that's kind of like what really started putting me onto this path. And then I had to really sit with, she gave me the homework of, you have to become the way of humility, the way of selfless service to heal this wound, because it's not about you, it's about honoring their pain. And I don't believe I'm at the bottom of it. I believe it's so intricately woven into all these different pieces that I've been working on for the last year now, with all of this suppressed anger. And yeah, so I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot for someone to look at that part of themselves. I think most people become masters at running away from looking at anything where they've caused harm or where they've shown up very ugly. So I've seen you move through this wound. It's been very deep. And I know that you're not at the end of the story of this one, but it was really eye-opening for me to be able to see you move through some really, really painful stuff and just honor what was coming up. So I just want to honor you in that way, because it was, it's been heavy for you.
yeah, some deep stuff. And a lot of the work that we do is we look at the energies that we carry, right, and healing those. But it's been a very different experience looking at, instead of like the harm that was done to me, looking at the harm that I'd done to another. It was a very tough pill to swallow, to see all of the ways that I have shown up as this villain. This lesson has been coming through a lot with our animals. When my Ellie and I have two dogs, when they don't show up perfectly behaved, this part of me tends to come out, and that's how it's been reflected to me over the last year, was through our animals when they're not behaving as such, and it's triggering all of my lack of control and powerlessness. So yeah, it's been a real beautiful challenge to look at these aspects of myself and see where I've shown up like this. And the beautiful part is the freedom that I'm seeing at the other side of understanding, this is why I felt for so long, why I felt so insecure about who I was. I always wanted to be the good guy, but deep down on this subconscious level, there was harm that I've created. There was parts of me that are unloving. There were parts of me that would come out that I would see, and I didn't want to accept that as me. And I think that's a lot of people, and that's one of the ways where we get so insecure, is because we're seeing in the world somewhere an aspect of ourselves, or we're worried about being seen as that, and it's hard to embrace and accept. It is.
Yeah, and the ironic part is that the moment you go into it and feel the depths of what is in there, you're uncuffing yourself. I think that the way that we abuse ourselves is we know that there's so much shame in there, and instead of allowing ourselves to open to the shame and feel all of the shame, we just keep shaming ourselves even deeper and deeper into a hole. It's the way that we keep ourselves punished. It's the way that we hurt ourselves because we haven't processed the fact that we've hurt other people, which I always think is so interesting about humans, the things that we do to ourselves as a result, instead of, yes, I caused harm. Yes, that's really painful. Now let me open and let me honor and let me love everything that is in there. I mean, that is what healing is. And most of us don't do that. We just get trapped in the shame and the blame and the judgment, the self-hate and the criticism. And it's like, it's really like it's masochism. Like it's just, it's almost like I think there's a sense of like, we enjoy it, like punishing ourselves. And I think that's the level of consciousness that we've been at for so long.
Yeah, when you're when you carry a lot of, especially abuse, that's just reenacting that abuse. So yeah, there's a sense of vibrational resonance that happens when we do that to ourselves. And that's why, like, when we carry a lot of shame, we tend to do shameful things and we think that it feels good. We think that doing things at that vibration feels good, when actually it's just our programs are vibrating because we have a lot of that in there. And actually, the more that we heal, we see, wow, that was really low, and I'm not particularly proud of that. But as you said, it's like all of this is disconnection from our power. And if we're taught this growing up, we're taught how to open our hearts and truly connect to the divine us, then these parts of us, that whatever it is that we experience, we move through, they can be looked at from a very different light, and our shadow just does not want to look at it. And that's partly because this is a real deal process. Like Rachel always says, this is an energetic process, and to become powerful, to be able to look at all these aspects of ourselves and others, we really have to do the work day in, day out. It isn't a I want to do it on the weekends kind of thing. It's no, like, this is every day. There's no, well, I'll do this Monday and Tuesday, and then no, like, this is life. This is how we move through life. We bring our shadow into everything that we do. And that's why, even coming into it, was like through sharing on social media, like completely unrelated to what particularly happened, this particular instance I'm speaking of, completely unrelated, but that energy is in me, and therefore it's showing up in my life. And the only way, through that is to see it and to love it.
Yeah. We're fostering 2 puppies right now, and I have seen parts of myself that are so ugly. And there was this one day where I was losing it. Like, they were yapping and barking and screaming, and they were chaotic. And I just screamed. And as I was screaming, I screamed like, "Stop!" And I was looking at one of the puppies dead straight in the eye. And as soon as I did it, I was like, "Oh my God, I just showed up like my mother. And I just caused harm to this little being." Even obviously there was no physical touch or anything, but the fact that I just even lost myself in that moment, just scream stop. Like, they're babies, they're just learning how to be in this world. And then I show up in this very, very unloving, harmful way. For what? Because I'm lacking patience, I'm lacking responsibility, I'm lacking surrender. And in that moment, I was just completely filled with shame. So much shame and so much guilt over like what I just did, how I just showed up. And I felt myself wanting to just stay in the shame, not feel it or process it, but to just shit on myself for it. And I caught myself really quick and I was like, this is where we heal this aspect of you that's showing up right now. And the one way that I kept calling in was the way of harmlessness and gentleness, because in that moment, I was not harmless and I was not gentle. And that is one of the biggest ways that were lacked in my upbringing, was the way of harmlessness and gentleness. And to see myself become what I endured, that's not fun to look at. It's not fun to feel. It's not fun to see. It's not fun. But I also don't want to be that. And so we constantly have a choice on what are we going to do in that moment? Are you just going to perpetuate the cycle and then start shaming yourself and stay in that program? Or are you going to recognize the program, open your heart, shine a light on the program, process what you just did, how you just showed up? Because I knew exactly who was showing up. I knew what age where I learned how to do that, right? And my job in that moment is to go, okay, whatever and whoever, how many inner children are here right now, we need to open right now. You have to feel the shame and guilt because it was overpowering me, like what I felt. And then afterwards, as I processed that, I went up to the puppy and it wasn't this energy of like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It was this energy of like truly like a place of, I just processed and I'm so sorry that I showed up in this way and what I want to be and become constantly. And I know you are here to bring that, what like that particular way of oneness, the way of harmless and gentleness, for me to step into the beingness of that. Thank you. And every single time I'm about to lose my shit, and I'm not perfect, but every time I do, I drop in and I open. I'm like, I'm the way of harmlessness and gentleness, and just honor and alchemize in real time, like what wants to come out that's going to harm these little beings. And so, even though they drive me crazy, they have been really beautiful, big gifts for me to see parts of me that I could have never. How I'm not going to have human kids, and like my dogs in general, like, are older and like they're not going to trigger what these little things are triggering inside of me. And so I really see them as just such a little present because, gosh damn, we always say you don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like my dad. And then one day you show up like just like them, and it's like it's tough. It is. It's not an easy one, but yeah, it's been quite the gift.
Yeah, they're an interesting pair, those two puppies.
Yeah.
They've been a lot for us, and we're just trying to learn the lessons that I know we're supposed to learn. But I'd love to go back to something you said. You said, I don't want to be that in there. And this is, I think, a really important thing to go into, because there's two energies that can come from, right? You can say that, and I know the place you're coming from, you can say that and it can be from a place of resistance. And this is why at Masters of Self University, we always are awakening to the energies that's behind what it is that we're thinking, feeling, saying, doing. And then there's also the, I don't want to be that because I know how much harm that it creates. And when we, come from that place, that flows through our heart, that I don't want to be that. But a lot of what happens is it may start there, but because we're not fully connected to our heart in every moment, the program takes over and it goes into resistance. And I don't want to be that. And it looks the other way until you get a beautiful 5-month-old puppy to come and reflect that back to you, that, oh, maybe I am that. Maybe I am the villain. Maybe I have shown up in that way. And it's really interesting to see this villain. It's the way I see it is like it's the polarity of the victim. So there's like the villain and the victim. And this is another aspect to all of this, is feeling like the victim because somebody else was the villain. And, through this work, this is where we have to really elevate out of, is creating the villain, creating the victim, and being able to live from a very different energy, a one of true power. And when we speak, we've done a lot of podcasts on victim consciousness, a lot of powerlessness in there. And I feel like there's just, when I feel into it and see these programs that have awakened through this past year, is really seeing like, the victim just blames everyone. It blames everyone and everything. And that's what keeps us in that hamster wheel of creating the villain of like, this is all their fault. Like, they did this to me. They're the bad ones. They're the baddie. I'm the superior good one over here. Or in the case of the victim, I'm the inferior victim right now, and you should all feel sorry for me. And this is another card that my shadow loves to play, which is, well, look at me. I'm the victim right now. And it's some rough stuff to look at.
Yeah, it just made me cringe because there's somebody big in my life who loves to play the victim and everybody else is the villain, but never acknowledges that she is the villain of so much. But back to what you're saying of, I don't want to be that, and then fully accepting, while this program is running, I am that, and the full acceptance of that. There's freedom in that. So then now you can move on to the next level, which is now you accept that you have shown up and you are these ways, right? And the powerless, weak, mean, cold, whatever it is, harmful. I am that. And let's get to a place where I no longer am carrying that vibrational frequency in my fields, because it's not really it's not nothing of what and who you really are. But to deny that is to deny this wounded aspect. It's to deny that wounded inner child. The moment I was like, okay, this is a part of me and I want to heal it because I'm here to become who and what I really am. It's just the level to freedom. And I think a lot of people don't want to accept that they are that. And that's where you get trapped and that's where you get stuck. So,
because accepting that is mortifying.
Yes.
Because and this comes back to like the societal conditioning, right? When we've been programmed to believe that there is a bad person and there is a good person, and you either fall into one of those character categories, you're either good or you're bad. You're either the good guys or you're the villain. Which one do you want to be in? Which camp? And everyone is going to want to say, well, obviously I want to be the good guys. Like, I don't want to be the one that everyone hates. And that brings me to another point, is like, being powerful enough to be okay that everyone hates me. That was part of this. And I think for most of my life, and I've not got to the root of this yet, for most of my life, I've been so insecure and worried about people not liking me, which is why we people please, and I've contorted and twisted myself in each and every way in all these weird behavioral programs, and all of the drinking that I used to do and the way that I would show up when I would drink, just to try and make sure that people liked me. Yes, I can feel some stuff there that's still in there.
Yeah.
Because feeling everyone's hatred, and especially I think because I'll speak for us both, we're both so sensitive, we can really feel that, and we can feel how unloving and painful that is. I don't want to ever feel that. And I don't know where this began in my childhood yet. And maybe I'll never know, or maybe it'll open up through this work. That's the beauty of it. But what I've come to see is that the more that I just do the work in all these other ways, in healing myself, becoming more powerful, I've arrived at a place where I'm not worried about everyone hating me, because if they do, I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I don't hate myself, because I can look at myself with divine eyes. And again, that's what sets us free, and is allowing ourselves to be hated if that's necessary, and knowing that that's not maybe what they hate us for isn't true.
Yeah, I think the funniest part about all of it is that people who hate on you, they're just showing their cards about themselves. And then we take that so personally, but we're just gifting each other in that moment, because when you're hating me, you're bringing up all this stuff that needs my healing. And when you're hating me, you're also showing everything that in you that is lacking love. That's something, it's still a wound that I'm working through, of wanting everyone to love me. And the truth
Mm.
of the matter is that not everyone's going to love you. And a lot of people don't like me, like whether they're on the internet, or I've had, friendships that, fell through, or whatever it is. And some of the people that I love the most are people who their foundation never gets shaken when somebody causes harm. Even though obviously it's never going to feel good. Never. Even if you're the most enlightened being in the world, if someone comes up to you and says, like, you're ugly and I hate you, that's harmful. Like, that's the energy of that is painful. But the difference between that and, wow, that's really nasty, and that the energetic vibration of that wasn't great, but it's not going to shake the grounds that I am at, because of the love that I have for myself. Like, that's pure power. Um,
Yeah, it's
and
not going to make you like come out swinging just because somebody said something,
yeah,
negative. Yeah, it's beautiful power.
yeah.
Yeah, and all this comes down to the way of responsibility, the first way of oneness. Like all of this stuff, we're all speaking about, like, we just have to be willing to look at ourselves.
Hmm.
That's it.
Yep.
And whenever we're speaking about blame or the victim, the villain, it's, yeah, let me take responsibility for me. Why am I casting out all of this hate towards another person? Why am I so worried about being hated? Let me just become responsible for me and myself. And that is the first piece there, is I have to look at all the harm I've caused and harm I will cause if I don't become these ways of oneness, if I don't heal myself.
Imagine if every single person just became the first way. Holy shit, our world would change so fast, so drastically. I see it in my nuclear family, of how one person's lack of taking responsibility over themselves poisons every single other being in the family, and doesn't even care to change that or to do anything, because they're stuck in victim consciousness. And it's like, if you just took responsibility over you, every single person in this family, we would all be vibrationally lifted. Yeah, because you don't, everybody suffers.
Yeah, because the way of responsibility, like that word responsibility, I think when I first heard it, it's being filtered through that child in me that doesn't want to be responsible, right? I don't want to be responsible, and there's a bunch of resistance there, of which I've been healing all these different programs around procrastination and why I don't want to be responsible. And I think we see that, or we can do it. Speak for myself. We can see that as like, oh, it's just I've got to be responsible. Oh, like that wounded, young, immature aspect of us. But when you really, like today, I was really tapping into that energy and doing a lot of cleaning and organizing, which I've been procrastinating. And when I start tapping into that, I realize how enlightened being responsible is. And obviously, what you're speaking about is being responsible over your own mental and emotional state of being, which is obviously, where it starts. And it's such a high frequency that I think it can be very easily written off. Because yeah, I think the inner child can view it as like a bad thing, because I don't want to be responsible, on a subconscious level I'm speaking, of course. But yeah, if we could all get there, take accountability and ownership for our own stuff. Wow.
Yep. And that's also to show everybody's stuck at such young ages. And so if you don't even know that you're trapped at 3 years old, or you're trapped at infant, or you're trapped, how are you ever going to get out of it? And that's why the first step into doing any kind of inner work is the first step into like true freedom and true change within yourself, and then the external. And so everyone out there, if you're like, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to go, become the first way. If you feel your soul calling you to start doing some inner work, because the way that you're showing up is you know, you don't like it anymore. You know, I'm working with a client right now, and he says to me, I just don't want to be what I've always been. I just don't want to be. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. And he took the first step and started doing the work. And now he's shifting like insanely because as a result of it. And so for anybody out there, the first way is the way of responsibility. Leap. Whatever programs, teachers, whatever calls you, if MSU calls you, okay, set up a free consultation with us to learn how to join a group class or work with any of us one-on-one. Check out Rachel's book, The 20 Universal Ways of Oneness. It is out on Amazon. There's also a digital course that goes along with it called The Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness. And to everybody that is in the world, okay, we have our first ever in-person live event on March 16th of this year, 2024, in San Diego, California. Okay. It is going to be an epic event. It will be live. Rachel will be there to do group healings, to do activations, to do healings. If you are tired of suffering, if you are tired of living on hell on earth within and on the outside, this is the event you want to attend. We have people flying in for this, okay? The early bird ticket sales right now are going to end soon. So check us out. Come get a ticket. Come meet us. Let's gather together in oneness. It is called Awakening to Oneness. It is going to be one you do not want to miss. So get your tickets now. Links are on masterselfuniversity.com and all of our bios. And so we can't wait to see you there. And we love you all so much. Keep doing the work, keep growing. And until next time, we'll see you guys then. Bye.